Europeans love night trains, or at least that is the result of this poll showing us that 73% of Europeans are willing to take them. A technology and system that was almost entirely written off a decade ago is looking as if it's making a comeback. Night trains are cool, hip, and importantly, a low-carbon alternative to flying, which promise travelers a fresh, early morning arrival at their destination. And if we believe politicians, journalists, and news headlines, night trains will dominate the continent's transportation network in the coming years. So what is the business model of night trains? Are they hot or hype, and can they ever dethrone the plane? Night trains are not new. The first sleeper cars in the United States are more than 160 years old, and they would be popularized in Europe by the legendary Orient Express, which took passengers on a week-long journey from Paris to what was still then called Constantinople. But the heyday of night trains was in the 1950s and 60s as the era of mass holidays emerged and people looked for long-distance travel options. Yet even in their golden age, night trains were already facing competition that would squeeze them out of business. The post-war era in Western Europe would see a transportation revolution, with cars, high-speed trains, and planes all being deployed over the course of a 30-year time span. And from a pure transportation perspective, night trains would prove to be a worse option than both planes and high-speed trains. The business model of transportation in general is quite straightforward. Pick people at point A and charge them for dropping them off at point B, both as fast and as cheaply as possible. Let's start by taking a look at plane travel, which took off from the 1980s onwards, with first market liberalization and later the arrival of low-cost flight companies. Planes go from point A to point B directly with no in-between stops, and they only need infrastructure on arrival because, well, they're flying. That makes them relatively cheap to operate, especially for long distances, but they have the drawback of taking time to board. This made it possible for high-speed trains to compete, which emerged in the 70s and 80s in the form of German ICEs, the French TGVs, or Italian ETRs. Since trains don't have boarding time and they arrive directly in city centers, they were able to compete time-wise in distances up until 800 kilometers. What's more, high-speed trains like planes go from A to B, but they also stop at multiple stations where they can pick up new passengers, each buying a ticket and contributing to the profitability of the train ride. And this allows to make up in part for the expensive infrastructure that they use. But you see, night trains are somewhat different than your regular train or high-speed trains. They can't service intermediate cities because of their nightly schedule. Nobody apart from some drunk students or 20-something Americans living it up on their Eurotrip is going to head down to the station at 3 in the morning in Frankfurt to hop onto the Amsterdam to Vienna night train. In that sense, a night train does basically what a plane does, connecting two far-flung clusters of cities nearly directly. But night trains do so while taking up more time and using expensive infrastructure for long distances. And that's a problem, especially when you consider that these are the two main criteria when people book long-distance transportation. And to make matters worse for the night train, high-speed trains make much more sense economically for operators as well.
Train grande vitesse, vous faites 4 trajets Paris-Marseille en une journée. Il est beaucoup plus simple à gérer un train grande vitesse. Vous n'avez que des sièges avant. Il n'y a pas de lit. Il n'y a pas de petit déjeuner.
The possibility to make more journeys and the simplicity of service meant more profit for railway companies operating high-speed rail as opposed to night trains. And so as high-speed rail spread across much of Western Europe, night trains were progressively relegated to secondary lines where less developed infrastructure and longer travel times still justified their use. For a long time, it seemed as if it was the end of the line for Europe's night trains, with the last holdouts waiting to be taken over by cars, planes, buses, or high-speed trains. By 2015, the German train operator Deutsche Bahn reported that a mere 1% of its passengers on long-distance travel were on night trains, a division that was losing 32 million euros every year. Most operators pulled equipment out of service, sold it off, or sent it to the scrapyard. And nearly 3 decades of line closures have gutted much of the night train network in much of Western Europe, such that this 2017 report by the European Parliament's Research Service wrote that this was the end of the line for Europe's night trains. Night trains continue to be relevant in a couple of places though, where it didn't have to compete with high-speed rail. This included places like Central and Eastern Europe, which is still home to plenty of night trains, a few lines between Spain and Portugal, Italy, where subsidies have kept the service alive, and Europe's night train champion, Austria, which would almost single-handedly save the night train in Europe. And do you know what else Austria has apart from Europe's largest stockpile of night trains? That's right, it has today's sponsor, Holzkern. If you're now wondering why I'm wearing sunglasses indoors and wearing this gorgeous watch, it's because a few weeks ago Holzkern sent me these bad boys. And I have to say the watch has rarely left my wrist, and for being in Spain these past couple of months, the sunglasses have rarely left my nose. I really like the beautiful Austrian craftsmanship, the focus on natural, sustainably sourced materials, and the way they just smoothly snap into place. These are just two of Holzkern's line of amazing products, which includes watches, sunglasses, and bracelets for men. Since according to my YouTube statistics, 95% of you are guys, Holzkern also makes products for women that make great gifts for a mom, a sister, or a girlfriend. If you're looking for a timepiece to pimp up your outfit or a pair of shades to enjoy the rest of the summer glow, then look no further than Holzkern. To treat yourself to a unique piece of craftsmanship, go check out the link down below and make sure to use discount code INTOEurope15. Now, back to the video. So after decades of decline, the news today is full of headlines about the re-emergence of night trains and several nines being re-announced. So what is going on and why this sudden reversal? A lot of this has to do with Austria's OBB's success in operating profitable night train routes. As everyone was throwing in the towel, OBB made a strategic bet on night trains, buying Deutsche Bahn's 42 remaining carriages and starting a new business branch, Nightjet, to operate its night trains. Nightjet's strategy was simple: create a three-tiered service for night trains targeting three customer segments.
Les Autrichiens veulent englober un public écolo, un public moyen, familial et un public qui paye cher.
This corresponded to three business offers: seats for environmentally conscious, sleeping berths for families, and full-on cabins for the well-off. And that has proven to be a winning strategy, but in a way you wouldn't expect.
Vous avez les trois conforts: les voitures-lits, les voitures couchettes et les voitures places assises. Et je vous donne dans le mille qu'est-ce qui se réserve le plus et le plus rapidement. C'est les voitures-lits, les voitures les plus chères.
That's right. To make their night train successful, OBB, much like the original night trains, returned to offering a premium service. Despite accounting for just 1.5 million rides or 2% of their tickets, night trains accounted for 17% of their profits in 2016. And this is a model that has been successfully copied by Transdev in 2021 when it launched a new train line from Stockholm to Berlin. The success of this model and its replication has created renewed interest by existing operators like Trenitalia, which are in full expansion, and see new companies interested in joining the fray, like the French Midnight Trains and the Dutch-Belgian Moonlight Express. And it's fair to say there is growing potential for international night trains, especially since 3 decades after the liberalization of plane travel and Schengen, which started removing EU borders. In 2016, the EU liberalized the rail market and opened it up to competition. Together with the opening of new railway interconnectors between European countries, there would be new expansion opportunities at an unprecedented ease. Take the Lyon-Turin tunnel, which would shorten the journey between the two cities from 4 hours to a mere hour and 45 minutes. The tunnel, if completed, would not only be great for travel between the two cities with high-speed rail, but could also open up a door for new international night train routes between cities even further. Thanks to the tunnel, Barcelona to Milan would become a 6.5-hour ride instead of a 12-hour one, making it a manageable distance for night trains. With plans to expand the network of high-speed rail by the European Union through its TEN-T network, more of these connections will make the high-speed rail and therefore night trains competitors to some of Europe's busiest air routes. Yet despite this potential driven by new developments in business models and an ever-increasing interconnection of Europe's train network, scaling night trains is a logistical, bureaucratic, and business nightmare. Despite liberalization, the European Union's train market is a patchwork of different subsidy systems and tariffs.
L'Europe a pondu une directive en disant vous faites un calcul de frais. Mais, ce qu'on n'a pas fait, c'est une méthode de calcul. Et donc on a laissé à chaque pays le soin d'élaborer la méthode de calcul qu'il veut. Et alors il y a des pays qui décident de prendre en charge une partie des péages et d'autres pas, ou d'autres en partie.
A night train circulating from Belgium to the Czech Republic, like the planned European sleeper, has to deal with 4 different infrastructure usage prices, 4 different subsidy systems, which might involve travel speed and the hour and the night in which they travel. And that means that there is no unique business model that can scale at the European level. Instead, Europe's night trains will have to grow on a case-by-case basis with careful calculation on individual route segments. Setting up a night train route is a business case puzzle, to which comes the additional logistical challenge of delivering a hospitality service on a moving hotel. And that is maybe the crux of the problem so far. night trains have been mostly viewed in the lens of transportation and not hospitality.
Pour moi, il faut absolument considérer le train de nuit comme un hôtel. Il y a un énorme problème psychologique dans la tête des gens. Tout le monde, absolument tout le monde parle de voyage en termes d'heures passées. On n'est pas obligé de parler comme ça.
And the convenience offered by OBB shows that a service based on offering convenience and comfort while arriving at a suitable time rather than just going as far or as fast as possible is a winning strategy. And perhaps we should stop calling them night trains and instead call them hotels on rails. After 3 decades of winding down, many of the producers of night trains have gone out of business, meaning it will take time to build them and just as long to develop the routes on which they would work. But with a successful business model developed by OBB and orders abound, it's possible that we are on the cusp of a minor transportation and hotel revolution. But what do you think? Will night trains ever outcompete other methods of transportation, or are they ever destined to remain a niche? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Once again, I'd like to invite you to check out Holzkern. Make sure to use discount code INTEREUROPE15 for 10% off.